I need a dollar, 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 that's what I need. Hey, hey. Well, I need a dollar, 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 that's what I need. Hey, hey. Said I need a dollar, 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 that's what I need. And if I share with you my story, would you share your dollar with me?
So the Minority Business had prepared a PowerPoint presentation. I reviewed it, and first thing I shared with him that it was way too long. And I gave him a perspective. I said the chief procurement officer of this very large company, his attention span, not because he's attention deficit syndrome, but his business attention span is probably 5 minutes. So you have 5 minutes to make an impression. So what do you want to say first? And how do you want to say it was my message. So after 2 more drafts, I think we got to a good presentation, because at the end of the day, what he needs to present is what is he going to do that is of value to this company, that this person is responsible for. So if you think about put yourself in their shoes, then you're going to be in a much better position to be successful with these buyers and decision makers. So we had a very successful meeting. So those are the types of things. So I went with him. So that's another service. So I accompanied him to the meeting, made the introduction, sat in on the presentation, supported him, and I think we had a good outcome. So those are things that we do on a fairly routine basis for the minority business community. And we're also strong advocates. So we advocate for minority businesses throughout the region, and that takes the form of committee work that we do. We're prolific promoters of minority business in the media and elsewhere. So we're out in the trenches trying to assist the minority business community get further ahead.
And what companies, corporations do you feel are the biggest supporters from your experience?
Well, we have about 200 plus corporate members, and so it's always dangerous to pick out 1 or 2, but there are some that kind of stand above the others in terms of the quality of the supplier diversity programs that they run, and the passion with which the leadership of those corporations put behind it. And I can point to some recent winners. We have an awards ceremony, and these are awards that are determined by the minority business community. So these are not awards that I give based on what they do for us. These are awards that the minority business community believes are deserving because of the work that they do. So this year, for instance, we give out 2 corporate awards, what we call our local corporation of the year and the national corporation of the year. And this year our local corporation of the year was National Grid. And National Grid is a fairly large regional power company. They have extensive operations up in the Massachusetts and Rhode Island community. And for the last 3 years, they have put on one of the best conferences, supplier diversity programs in our region, and actually it's become sort of the model that a lot of the other companies that we work with are following. And very similar to the event that Partners did, where it's not only the National Grid buyers that attend this, but it's also the National Grid large suppliers, so that the MBEs and WBEs have a chance to interact with not just the direct buy, but also the second tier purchasing opportunities. And we've had just tremendous results. So it's not just for show. We had one of our minority businesses 2 years ago won an $8 million contract as a result of that show. I was happy to learn that the next year, not only did the contract get renewed, but it got increased. So, they didn't know these people. So before that program, they didn't know each other. and they didn't know. And so if you don't know each other, it's hard to do business. So
that's a great success story.
It's a great success story. So I wish we had more of those types, and we do have some. But National Grid was really deserving of the award this year, and it was largely because of the work and dedication of their staff for that program. We also, at the National Corporate Award, the awardee this year was United Technologies Corporation. United Technologies is one of the largest companies in Connecticut, with Sikorsky Aircraft, Pratt & Whitney, Hamilton's spacecraft, the Otis elevator,
right, yeah.
Carrier air conditioner. So
yeah.
they have a huge presence here in Connecticut, and they historically have been one of our stronger corporate supporters, and there's a history here. One of their former CEOs, George David, was the former national chairman for the National Minority Supplier Development Council. And I think it was during his role as the NMSDC chairman of the board, that he really infused UTC with supplier diversity. And so UTC is a company that has a very strong culture in terms of how it does things. And so they treated supplier diversity like everything else that it does. So at UTC, and I feel like I work there because I've been there so many times, they have something called Achieving Competitive Excellence, or ACE.
Right, I'm familiar with it.
And so the ACE approach is kind of a Six Sigma quality program, but also highly, focused on competition. And so they spend a lot of time and effort in their supplier diversity activities applying ACE techniques. And so there's a process at UTC of how supplier diversity should be done for the benefit of UTC, as well as the benefit of the MBEs. And so they were recognized not simply because of the size of their spend with minority business, which is huge, but because of the additional value that they're providing the minority businesses in their supply chain.
With that training, that ACE training.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's something.
So they share that ACE training with those suppliers, and it's not a surprise to me, but in ACE, you can become an ACE Gold supplier.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, so their suppliers, not only does UTC want all of its employees and divisions and business units to be ACE Gold, they want their suppliers to also have the same commitment to quality that they do internally. And so many of our MBEs that are suppliers to UTC have gone through the ACE training. And it's not only helped them with UTC, it's helped them with other corporate customers.
That's fantastic. What about that Saturday morning program that you were telling me about?
Sure, the Community Business School. It's one of my favorite things to do. And this is a free entrepreneurial education program that we run here in our Bridgeport office. It's designed to assist early stage businesses of all races and genders. And it's sort of the type of school that I think I would have excelled in, which is no grades, no tests.
You mean it's just about learning?
It's just about learning. And what we do is we bring in entrepreneurs to share their stories with these early stage entrepreneurs. We also have a few corporate members who come by and share their stories about business in general and the types of things that they're looking for in companies and entrepreneurs. So it's a great learning culture that we're trying to develop here in Bridgeport for urban businesses.
So tell me, I guess that's part of your mission, really.
Yeah.
And where do you see yourself or the GNE MSDC in the next 2 to 3, 5 years?
Yeah. Well, I think we are continuing to sort of expand the range of services and activities that we offer to the minority community and the communities that we serve. So, for instance, we've just successfully won a grant from the Connecticut Health Foundation. You say the Health Foundation, what's the connection?
Yeah.
Well, the connection is we, through our connections with the minority business community, are able to hopefully influence the minority business owners to offer their employees or to get engaged with the Affordable Care Act opportunities. And so, you know, there's a lot of literature that shows that you know, if you're not offering your employees health insurance, one, you're not going to attract top employees, and two, your good employees will leave at the opportunity they get to, not necessarily because they don't like working with you or for you, it's because they need health insurance.
Exactly, right.
So we see this as a competitive factor for minority businesses, and so the Connecticut Health Foundation agrees, and so they're going to support our efforts to help increase the utilization of the Affordable Care Act with minority businesses. So that's something. Another example of sort of our expansion of services is we have a contract with the Community Capital, which is a non-bank bank here in Bridgeport. This is a program funded by the state of Connecticut, and this program is designed to increase the bonding opportunities for minority businesses in construction. One of the big barriers for minority construction companies is they can't get a bond.
Sure.
And so in this program, what we do is we're offering training first to the minority businesses in construction, so that we want to get them to the point where they become bondable in the private sector. But in the meantime, what we do with this program is we have $2 million in guarantee money. So once we're comfortable with that MBE, we have essentially a facility to underwrite the bond for us. Okay. Once they show that they can complete the project on time, on budget, and the bond company's money is safe, then they are going to be in a much better position to get their own bond on their own.
Excellent.
So this is something that we're doing.
So in a sense, you're launching them.
Correct. So we're giving them their first bond, essentially.
So how does it feel to be so instrumental in all these small businesses?
Well, you know, it's a great joy, great responsibility, and a lot of work. But it's good work, so I enjoy doing it.
And who are your mentors?
Well, I've had many mentors over the years. One of the very first, is what I would say my professional mentors, was a gentleman that I worked for when I was at UCLA, who was at that time one of the few African-American economists with a PhD in the country. He was the vice chancellor at UCLA, and I had the fortune to work for him. His name was C.Z. Wilson. And so he was really one of the people who encouraged me to study economics. And so he was there. Then at Yale, I had a very good, strong mentor in James Tobin, who was a Nobel Prize laureate. And I had the opportunity to meet him when I was at UCLA, and he was kind of always standing over my shoulder and looking out for my interests. So those are two people who come to mind. But you know, family is very important, and you know, in this job you meet a lot of people, and you meet a lot of people who are very successful, and you learn a lot. They may not know they're mentoring, but I'm paying attention all the time to people and how they're doing things, and trying to take some of those lessons in the things that I do.
What obstacles would you say that you face, Dr. Fred, on a regular basis?
Obstacles for the G&E side. Well, I think you know, it's getting quite, you know, it's hard. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's getting easier. So
that's fantastic.
It is. It's getting easier.
I'm happy to hear you say that.
It's getting easier, and and that's better than it's getting harder. It's getting
much.
easier. I think because of the work that we've done over the years, that when we introduce ourselves to business leaders, political leaders, others, they've heard about us.
Yep.
They know a little bit about us if they don't know us well. And so that's always better than always having to start from ground zero.
Yes.
And so we're trying to build on the positive reputation that we have, and and that is something that's very important to us as an organization, is that reputation. And it's one of those things that in business and in the professional world, it's very fragile, and it's perhaps the most important thing, the most important asset that you have. And so we protect that, and we try to do what we say we're going to do, and when we say we're going to do it, and how we're going to do it. So that's all very important to us. But there still are challenges. Our move to Hartford is really directed to become to the construction industry. The bonding is construction related. We see that there's just tremendous opportunities in construction. We have not, as an organization, been as strong in construction as I would like to be. And that's an industry, it's a tough industry. It's tough for minority and women-owned businesses. But that's really I think our big challenge right now is how do we break into some of the industries like construction, to a certain extent healthcare is like that.
Yes.
So healthcare,
that's been my experience.
Yeah, healthcare is a tough industry. So in all of these industries, healthcare, construction, even education, higher education, we're making inroads, but it's a slog. I mean, it's like one step at a time, and you have to be in this for the long run.
Yeah.
And if you're expecting things to happen overnight, that's just not the way change happens in these industries. They've been doing business in a certain way for decades, and so you're not going to come in and immediately change them. But we think we can change them so that they see the value of really seriously utilizing the services of minority businesses.
In my experience as a small business owner, I have found that patience, tenacity, and resilience are three characteristics that my company has to be rooted in, and that I have to be rooted in. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I agree 100%. I was speaking at the event yesterday at Partners, and I mentioned three things. One was patience, another was persistence, and so we were talking about the same things, and the other was excellence. And on the excellence piece, businesses, in my view, you got to work at growing, at selling and marketing your business services. But at the same time, and perhaps even more importantly, you got to work on your business so that your business becomes excellent. And there are things that you have to do every day that you can do every day. And so instead of getting frustrated that somebody's not returning your call, or you're not making inroads into a company that you've been doing business with, you're not selling more than you did 2 or 3 years ago, well, that's when instead of getting frustrated, you should be working on your business. What can I do to improve my business? What can I do to take cost out? What can I do to reduce variability? What can I do to improve my relationships with the community at large? So all of those things, I mean, there's always something to do. So I was encouraging the businesses to don't get frustrated. Don't let them see you sweat. Be persistent. Be patient, but also work on your business.
How many, one of the things that got me to start It's a Small Business World is the staggering amount of dollars that small business infuses into our national economy.
Yeah.
I mean, I always thought it was the corporate entity that does that.
No.
Can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. The statistics, the SBA likes to tout appropriately that most of the new jobs that are created in the U.S. economy are created by small businesses. If you look at corporate America, a substantial proportion of corporate America, they are growing, but their growth is global in nature, not so much domestic. And they are citizens of the world. Even our corporate members are citizens of the world, and they have to. If they're operating in these countries around the world, they have to be sensitive to those countries' needs as well, in terms of where they hire people and where they grow, and what's the most efficient market for them to grow certain things. But I do think that if you're looking at just the U.S. economy, it is through entrepreneurship and small business that you're going to get the biggest bang in terms of employment. And the fact of the matter is, the small businesses, many of the small businesses today will become mid-sized businesses tomorrow, and some of those mid-sized businesses will become the big businesses in the future.
Yeah.
One of the things I like to tell people is go get a 1960s Fortune 500 list and look at the companies on that list, and then get a Fortune 500 list today, and you'll see names in that 1960 list that don't exist anymore.
Absolutely.
And you'll see names in the 2014 list that weren't around, didn't exist in 1960. So so they're as big and powerful and strong as large companies appear right now, there's nothing written in stone that their future is guaranteed, and there is nothing written in stone that a small business can't be a great business tomorrow. They've just gotta they gotta solve all the problems that entrepreneurs have to get there, but those problems we know are solvable.
Well, I think, I was just reading actually about Instagram, how they went from 0 to 1 billion in 19 months.
Wow.
It's like, wow, how does that happen? And then I remember in 2008, was it 2008 with the Great Recession?
Yeah.
I remember watching my Washington Mutual stock be non-existent.
That's right.
And Lehman Brothers be non-existent.
Right.
So I think we've learned, as hard as it is, and even hard as it is to believe, that giants, Washington Mutual was the largest banking institution in the world.
That's right.
And it went out of business in days.
Exactly.
Lehman Brothers went out of business in days.
Yeah.
And then here we have 19 months, and we go from 0 to 1 billion.
That's right.
I can't even, I don't even know how many zeros that is, How does that happen?
Yeah, it does happen. It's 9 zeros.
Thank you. I figured you would know.
But the economist, there was an economist by the name of Schumpeter. He was a Austrian economist in the early 20th century, late 19th century. He coined a phrase called creative destruction, sort of an oxymoron. But it was, in his view, the fundamental characteristic of modern capitalist economies, and it was absolutely necessary for the growth of an economy and a society, in his view, that the creative forces of entrepreneurship would actually lead to the destruction of old models of business that were successful. And it's almost inevitable that and something that almost you want to encourage. So again, when you take the long view, that's the nature of capitalism, is to destroy businesses and industries that once seemed almost sacred.
That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that with me. So wrapping up, after something that profound, what's 2 pieces of advice that you would give to the entrepreneur?
Well, one, I would say stay positive. You really have to work on it. I know at times it's difficult because an entrepreneur, you lose more than you win. So you have to remain positive through those losses, and because the wins are going to come. And so, and when the opportunity for the win happens, you got to be on top of your game. So,
Yeah.
so I think that would be one thing that I would say. And you know, to your earlier point, I think that the whole issue of patience and is extremely important. So, you know, if you notice, I'm not talking about the finance or anything like that. We're talking about really what's in your head.
Yeah, exactly.
So it really is what's in your head. And,
Yeah.
And if you don't, you know, have the right attitude and mindset, then it's very hard to be successful as an entrepreneur. Because you know, you really, entrepreneurs are different. They're not the same as everybody, and you cannot be the same as everybody. If you know, if you were the same as everybody, you would just get a job.
Yeah.
You might be very successful at that job. You might make a lot of money at that job, but that job has different requirements. At least historically, it has. You know, not a job now. Companies talk about they want entrepreneurial employees, but there are limits to that.
Yeah.
So, but for entrepreneurs, there really are no limits.
Yeah.
You set your limits.
Yeah.
So, and that's in your head. So, you know, do the things to stay positive, and that means, you know, I had to give a talk the other day at Disney, up at ESPN, and one of the I said there are three things I needed you need to focus on. One was to focus on the customer, your customer. You know, words of Adam Smith, the 18th century economist, the customer is king, and so you got to take care of that customer. Number two, you have to focus on your business. We talked about that. And the number three, you got to focus on yourself. So, you know, if you I talked about at that Disney meeting, what do you have in common with Walt Disney? I mean, here's a $45 billion company. You might not think you have anything in common. Well, he started somewhere. In fact, he started with a failure.
Exactly.
His first business was a company called Newman Laugh-O-Gram that was started in 1922. Newman was a theater owner in Kansas City, and if you remember, I'm old enough to remember that when you went to the movies back in the late 50s and early 60s, before the movie started, you watched a cartoon. And so Newman owned a theater in Kansas City, and so Walt Disney was a struggling cartoonist, and so he hired and started a company with Disney to make cartoons for movies. That business failed.
Fascinating. Wow.
So he failed. His
Yeah.
first business was a failure. But in 1923, Disney moved to California, and as they say, the rest is history. But you know, when you think about health, again, taking care of yourself, Disney didn't do a good job of taking care of himself. So he died at 65 of lung cancer. And so, you know, you create all this wealth and success, doing all the right things, but not taking care of yourself. What's the point? So you really should take care of yourself as well.
That's fascinating. It reminds me when you were speaking of Og Mandino, who I'm sure you've read his books, the greatest salesman in the world. I mean, you know, there have been times when it's been so stressful for me in business. I've carried that book around and had those certain passages highlighted and just read them before I've gone into meetings, you know. And he talks about when you're not feeling up for your business, then you make sure you put on your very best clothes and your very best jewelry, and you take good care of yourself and do your hair up and go out, so that at least fine feathers make the bird.
There you go.
You know. So, well, thank you so much for sharing this fascinating information about what you've done and where you're going with the Greater New England Minority Supplier Diversity Council. I think I got it right. And we've learned a lot here today. So thank you, Dr. Fred.
You're very welcome. Thank you.